Welcome back to Studio One Vintage Guitars, New Zealand's home of vintage guitars. My name is Nick Brightwell. Today we are talking about string care. I'm going to take you through a quick rundown of what we do with our instruments and how we take care of them. So first, our guest is a 1953 Gibson J50. We have just sold her. She is going on the boat to a new owner. So a beautiful guitar. A little sad to see her go, to be honest. I don't play her all the time, but wonderful, wonderful instrument. So, looking after your vintage acoustic guitar is not as hard as it seems. There's just some basic things that you kind of have to adhere to, and it'll all work out just fine. So they are vintage instruments. They have their own story and they have their own kind of condition. So depending on what you've got, you might have some cracks in the top, some repaired work. You might have, in the case of this one, just wear and tear and a lot of finish checking, and basically you just want to be taking care of the instrument as you go. With the vintage ones, sometimes the tuners can be a bit of a challenge depending on what you got. These original tuners are a little stiff, but I'm going to get to work and we're going to just take off one string at a time. So that's the way I restring a guitar, is I will just take one string off at a time. You want to keep the tension on the neck about the same. You know, you'll see people cut strings. That's good for time saving and stuff, but an acoustic guitar shouldn't go through wide changes in tension, especially cutting strings like that. But it's not the end of the world if you want to cut your strings. Sometimes you have to get them off. But so basically what I've done is I've just wound off the first string. I've wound it until it's loose enough, and then I've kind of uncoiled it at the thing, and I've pulled it through the eye. Now to get the string out from here, sometimes the pin will be loose enough that you can just pull out with your fingers. Other times it won't be, and you might have to resort to using a tool. But the first thing I do is I kind of grab the string and I try and push it down. So you hear that little clink. So I've just pushed the string down, like down through the hole, to try and whatever contact it has to break that contact. And as soon as that little ting happened, basically just release the string. So here we have the bridge pin. Because I'm doing one guitar at a time, I keep the bridge pin off to the side, and then I put the string itself somewhere nice so I can maintain it, because the idea is you want to bind those strings up once you're done with them. So I am putting John Pierce light phosphor bronze on this. This is a dreadnought guitar, so some might want to put mediums on it, but because it's a vintage guitar, we generally put lights or extra lights on them. We just don't want to be putting too much tension on the top. It may be built for that, but in the case of this guitar, we're about to ship it off, so we're not going to be shipping it up to tune. And yeah, we just want to keep the pressure off the top and not put too much on it. They are, you know, these guitars have lasted this long, so they can handle what you're going to throw at them. But it's just best to be, you know, not put it through its paces all the time. So in the case of this, I'm starting with the 6th string. So I pretty much just take it off. I unwind it as so, and then I use the bridge pin. The way I do it is I take the ball end and I put it kind of put it in the pinhole, and then I use the pin itself to push the ball end down. So that kind of means that the ball end and the pin are in the same place. Then I bring the string through. Now Gibson guitars for me are a little bit harder to do by the eye. I have a Martin guitar, so I generally kind of know how long the string needs to be, but my general idea is I kind of keep it about that high off the fretboard. Depending on your tuning pegs, that might be a bit more of a challenge. See, now what I do is I want to keep the tension on the string as I wind it on. You can do it like this, where you kind of hold it in the nut. I try and keep the string out of the nut while I'm tuning it up, so I don't chew down the nut with the string. And so here what I'm doing is I'm just holding it off to the side. I'm not putting too much pressure on it, and I'm not trying to pull it down against the saddle back here. I'm just trying, the string can grind up the nut or the saddle. So then what I do is I see people restring all sorts of ways, but I just do it the very simple way, where I just feed the string underneath, and I don't tie it or anything. And I let this long string kind of go. I try not let it poke me in the eye or poke anything else in the eye. And so here I'm just tuning it up and I'm guiding it into the slot, and then it's kind of where it wants to be. It's about two winds around the peg. In the case of these old Gibsons, you don't have a really tall peg, so about 2 is about it. And then that's the string just moving a little bit down here. That's why I try when I put them together, so that string doesn't move around too much. Sometimes you can have the string will kind of be like the pin's here and the string's all the way down here, and you'll tune it up and all of a sudden it'll go. But now what I'm doing is I just tune it up to pitch. I don't stretch the strings yet. So now what I'm doing is I do this. Sometimes when you move the string up here, you'll let the string settle a little bit more, so you can just slip there. So now what I do is I reach in my pouch of toys and I pull out a brush, a pin puller, and a string cutter. And so when I do these, I just come really close to the thing, so I don't really leave much out. I've seen people kind of put the string around, you know, the ends here, and they put the string around the bottom and around the top and kind of hold it in. I don't find that does much. I've seen also people tie them in, so they kind of like knot it. The way that I've done it, I've never had problems with string slipping, and if you have too little of a string around, sometimes you can have it slip, but with all the open tuning that I do, just the way that I do it, I found it's fine. So taking off another string, I'm going to try and do this all as I restring the guitar, so if this makes it to air, it went well. So once again, here we are, we've got the string kind of, it's not loose, I can't really pull the pin out with my fingers, so I'm just going to push the string like that, and I've just pushed it kind of, I've broken whatever contact's going on, string comes out real easy. And I put them all together so I can wind them up together. So here we go into the first string. I do all the restringing here at Studio One, so sometimes I'm doing quite a lot of this. I don't use an automatic winder or anything like that for the vintage guitars because I don't really want to put the tuner through it. Once again, I kind of just eye it, get about that much height. Then I'm holding it off to the side, so I'm holding tension on the string, and I wind her up with my fingers. One day I was in here and I did 12 guitars in like 2 hours. So when I first actually started working here, all the guitars needed strings. So I was in here just winding away. So I can feel the strings just slipping a little bit down there, but she's almost coming right. I try and make sure that the string itself isn't touching the wood, because you can, if you looked at some old guitars, you'll see the string when it was going around the pole was somehow touching the wood, and you get a ring around the... I'm tuning by ear, and I'm kind of used to tuning by fourths and fifths and just tuning to kind of unison. So in the case of that A, I just went just like that. But I'll just say I studied fingerstyle guitar at university, and tuning your guitar was one of the most important things because you're always changing open tunings. So yeah, I don't have perfect pitch or anything like that. You just develop an ear for tuning over time. It's just simple practice, guys. That's all it is. I haven't got any special abilities. I just did it a lot. So I try and also the eye of the string pole, I try and get it so I can put the string right through. Once again, can I pull out my fingers? No. Oh, actually I can. Nice. Done. So I'm going to push that one down. Some are looser than others. You know, is it bad or is it good? If it's, as long as it doesn't pop out with ease, then you're all good. Sometimes it'll pop out at the very end, and that's when it's like, you know, especially when you're doing a slotted headstock. Slotted headstocks are a little bit more challenging, take a little bit more time and care. So once again, I'll push that finger tight, got the ball end with the pin down, and I pull it through the ting, and then I kind of get it around about that height, and then hold it off, hold the tension on, winder it. Today we're filming on the 5th of July, which means in America land it's the 4th of July, so happy 4th of July. Picture this, I'm driving to work this morning listening to John Philip Sousa. If you know who that is, you know I was listening to stirring marches on the way to work. Then I started listening to a little bit of Jimmy Martin, the king of bluegrass, so-called king of bluegrass, and Charlie Patton. So, celebrating the greats of American music, some of them. So, using harmonics, tune the string up. I'm going to cut it. You'll hear it go down and tune a little bit. Now stretching the strings are important, but I don't do that at this point. It depends on really how much time you got. So in the case of my stuff, I normally wind on the G's a little bit more, few more rounds. In the case of this one, I've done 3. So I'm just winding it to the point where I've got enough tension that I can pull it off the pole up here. So I can just kind of speed up the whole process and not have you guys watching me restring guitar. No chat. So can I pull out my fingers? Not a chance. So I'm going to try and push it down here. Is it going to go? No, it's not. Is it going to wriggle? No. I don't wriggle it free. So sometimes just a little wriggle, and all I'm doing is I'm just grabbing it with the top of my fingers and pinching it, and just, you know, I'm not trying to yank it out. You're going to ruin your guitar, but I'm just kind of gently, as they say, and yeah, you kind of see how you get on. So we're on to the G. We're halfway, people. So if you're still with us, thank you. We're just trying this one out today. So string care and guitar care as well. So I'm going to just keep repeating the same process with restringing. So let's talk about humidifying a guitar. The humidity of your guitar has a big impact on the sound. If you play your acoustic guitar all the time, you might notice that your guitar sounds better in the afternoon. Air pressure and temperature and humidity is different throughout the day. And in the case of New Zealand, especially in the Auckland area, sometimes the afternoon is actually the best time for all things. Basically, the sun's been out for a while and burnt off a bit of moisture. Too much moisture, too much humidity for your guitar can kind of dull it and make it sound a bit kind of muffled. When we first got in here, we didn't have a commercial dehumidifier, and sometimes the humidity levels were getting up to 60 to 70%. And a lot of the guitars, even the best ones in here, really didn't sound amazing. They just, you can just imagine they're just a bit damp. They get just a little bit soggy, and that's it. Once we start getting our humidity levels in here to about 50%, they kind of fluctuate between 45 to 55. All the guitars really started responding well. And some guitars that personally I was like, oh, it doesn't sound so great, sounded amazing. So yeah, very important. Now that's in the case of New Zealand, in the case of Auckland, it is a damp subtropical place. So humidity has a big impact on our guitars. Best advice is keep them in their cases. The cases kind of regulates. Tuning it up like that, and then so it's going to be a little bit. Basically what I'm listening for when I do it, I'm listening for the wobble. Now you can't really hear the wobble when I'm just playing the fundamental. It's much easier to hear it when you're playing the harmonic, but you get used to it over time. So, back to humidity. Keeping your guitar around about 50% is ideal. So if you have a room in your house that is, say, the windows are always shut and you can control the environment, that can be a good place to keep your guitar out and kind of out and breathing. I've been caught in between this because I've always liked to have my guitar right there. So I'm doing something, I can, and I want to play guitar, I can just grab it. I didn't always like the idea of having my guitar in the case and have to go to the case and get it out. I just like the kind of spontaneity of it. But in reality, keeping your guitar in a case, especially in a place like Auckland or on the Waikato in New Zealand, kind of anywhere the damp places, very important. And especially if it's very cold, it's better to keep in its case, because if it's very cold, then the guitar's going through all sorts of changes depending on the temperature. Remember, heat makes things expand, cold makes things contract, so that's why cracks happen in guitars when it's very cold, because the wood basically is shrinking slightly. Something gives way, there might be an inconsistency in the wood, very subtle, but once that cold kind of gets to it and all lack of humidity, bang, there's a crack. I've had my main guitar, all sorts it's got 2 humidity cracks. Yeah, very important. But in New Zealand, our climate is pretty nice. It's nothing like American climate. Well, America's a big place, but it's not as extreme as the American climate generally. So you don't have to worry about your guitar, getting down to -15 or anything like that. So right now this pin isn't going to come out, and I can tell it's not really going to give, so I'm just using this string tool, and I'm just pulling it very gently, trying not to break the pin itself. These are bone pins, so they're not going to break with ease. Sometimes the Martin plastic ones can break over time, they can just degrade as plastic does. So what else can we talk about? Yeah, so storage is pretty much covered. You know, the better the case, the better it is. So if you have a very vintage guitar that you want to take really good care of, I recommend keeping them in a Carlton case, something that's almost watertight. You know, a very good environment for the guitar to stay in. I've just ordered a Carlton case for my Holzhoffel, which is in dire need of a serious case. It's got its original 50s case or wherever it came from. And it is not a good case and not really good for keeping it from the elements. And if you have a vintage guitar, you know, and the climate's all over the place, having a serious kind of flight case is your best option to taking care of your instrument. Now in the case of this guitar, this B string winder is going to take forever. I think we'll see a new millennium by the time I get this done. So what else can we talk about? Yeah, just briefly, we have a competition going. If you're interested in winning yourself a Martin Dreadnought, we are giving away a D12 Martin. It's basically a Koa veneer, spruce top, electronics, very nice guitar. It's valued here in New Zealand. It's valued at $3,000–4,000. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm starting to freelance this one. Jeepers creepers, I'm going to need to go to see ACC after winding this thing up. We're almost there, I think. Generally, you know, a guitar like this, I'd switch it around and put it around the other way, so I'm not having to kind of reach over like this. You can see I've got this block here. Whenever I'm leaning on the guitar, or I'm not putting any weight on the guitar, I am resting my arm on the neck where this is, but I'm not pushing down here because right now this is elevated. You don't want to be breaking that. So yeah, gently as it goes. I like to, if I'm at home, I'll sometimes restring, like kind of sitting in a chair with the carpet, so I can kind of move the guitar around on the carpet and not get it dinged up by anything. This pin is just slipping just a little bit, so I'm going to just hold it there. So in tune, it will just see, you can hear it's just slipping just a little bit as I move the string around. She's cut. Is she tuned? Got a little bit flat. Close enough for now. So in this last guy, I'm just going to do a little lazy like this. In the case of the steel strings, in the case of the high B and E string, I kind of do 3, 4, 5 wraps. You know, you hear also, I mean, when it comes to string tuning up guitars, there seems to be all these kind of myths and stuff. I think the easiest no-no is don't wrap the string around the pole like a million times. Like the string is very long, but it's not intended for the whole string to be on there. They're accommodating for all sorts of guitar lengths and just, you know, being on the safe side, so giving a little bit more, you know. So anyway, that's the last one, and I'm going to pull this thing out with my fingers, and it went easy as. And then, so all the strings are there. I'll show you this quickly now. So I've got the 6 dead strings. What I do is I do this, put all the ball ends at one, I put them together. This is just, I've always done this, I just wrap them around like this. So you just kind of have a nice way of getting rid of the strings. That's something I've always thought about, is what happens to all the strings? You know, there's probably plenty of kids in Africa that could do with some strings. Maybe there's something that can be done about used strings in the future. So last E string, obviously I try not to let the string touch the body too much or kind of drag it across anything. So that's in there, it's finger tight, not too much pressure, you only try and really drive it in there. And I kind of pull it to the right about height, as you see, around about there. And we're on to winding. Now the good news is that I can do this one twice as fast as the last. Sometimes tuning, the gearing when you're tuning can get worn out depending on just how it's been used, or it might just slowly get faulty, or somehow the elements might have got into it. Closed back tuners, you don't generally have that problem, so that's generally all good. So we're just on the home stretch here now, and we're looking to get about onto our 3rd way around. As you'll see, I'm wearing a PBR-like shirt. This is actually in up north Wisconsin. Shout out to Wisconsin, or Wisconsin as it was once known. The northern woods of Wisconsin is quite incredible. So yeah, we've got the guitar, basically all the strings on. Let's get into tune. Almost to pitch. When I was at Groom Guitars, Rob, the store manager there, I've heard a lot of people tune guitars, and Rob, the store manager, is one of the best guitar tuners. I literally heard him pick up a guitar that's, you know, need to be tuned up by maybe 3 or 4 tones, and he's just walking down the door and going, doo, like all at the same pitch, just like same speed, same tempo, up to the same note every time. Really, really impressive. Yeah, there's no replacement for experience. So now that we've got all the strings on, the next thing that I'll do is I use, in the case of the John Pierce strings, they are not long life strings, so that means they are a little bit more susceptible to the elements. So here what I'm using is, I'm not going to use a brand new pack, I'm going to use one that I prepared earlier. I'm going to use just a string wipe, and this is basically like an oxidation wipe that I put on the string like this. So I wrap it around the string and run it up and down. I don't really touch the fretboard or anything with it, but it's not going to damage the fretboard at all. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting the little coating on these strings. Now this is what I've been doing. I, for a long time, used long life strings, but I've found that using these wipes just on your standard string has a really big impact. So pretty much that's there now as it is, and now I'm going to now the strings are kind of where they want to be. Now I'm going to stretch them. Now I kind of stretch them like a classical guitarist would, so I'm going to say put my finger on the 12th fret, and then I just kind of gently pull the string. What you'll get there is that's just the string actually getting itself like into the groove. So sometimes that'll happen. So the string was just basically just below the pin and settled, but once I pulled it, it just actually got into its proper spot. So now it's in tune, so I'm just going to do this. I don't do it too hard because you know you are pulling the string here and down here. And then say I'll go down to the 7th fret, see if there's any more. With your thicker strings you won't have to do it as much. I think during the process the strings do kind of stretch them out over time. So what I've done is I've got it relatively to standard tuning. It's probably a bit flat still. So now and the idea is you want to kind of stretch them until you stop hearing them go out of tune so much. Your steel strings, wire strings, going to be a little bit different. Okay, it's pretty much in tune. Now, with just going back to those string wipes, what I do now is just get a trusty rag and I wipe kind of the excess off the strings. And so now the guitar's pretty much ready to go. So in the case of this guitar, we're about to ship it off, so I'm going to tune the strings down to basically no tension on the guitar whatsoever. We're going to chuck it in the case, chuck it in the box, and put a bunch of protective stuff around it. If I was taking this guitar home, I'd just put it in its case and I'd probably get it out later tonight, play it a little bit, and just see if the strings are going to move around a little bit more, tune it up a couple of times. But generally, if you follow this process, your strings aren't going to need to get tuned up too much. And I guess I'm doing it quite quickly, and I'm doing it while I'm talking. So yeah, I've done it quite a few times. So maybe I'm making some things look a bit easier. But just take your time. You don't have to restring it in however long this video is taken. You can take yourself an hour. If you have a 12 string, if you have a slotted headstock, that is going to probably take you twice as long. As I was saying before, be very careful when the string's winding around, the sharp end that you've cut off. Make sure that that's not contacting the the faceplate of the headstock at all, otherwise you might kind of grind it up. That's always a little ugly mistake when it happens, but at the end of the day, these are instruments. You know, they're not made of glass. They can take a beating. They're designed to last a long time, as long as you take care of them. Yeah, and they're really here to play beautiful music. So it's not so much how they look, but depending on what your take is, yeah, you can do what you will with all of this information. So we'll just leave that there, and if this makes it to air, this will all worked out quite well. So once again, my name is Nick Brightwell. This is Studio One Vintage Guitars. We've got Josh Thomas behind the camera doing all the social media stuff. And yeah, we're going to send this guitar off to its new owner. Sad to see her go, but there'll obviously be something else coming back in soon. So have a good one, guys. Like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.